I'll sort of.
There you go.
Well, welcome everyone to our June webinar with Religion Communicators Council, RCC. I am Teresa Faust. I'm the president, and I want to welcome you all. I always open with our mission statement, and I will read that now. It sort of grounds us. It is: the Religion Communicators Council is a professional association that provides opportunities for networking and professional development for communicators of faith-based organizations. RCC recognizes and cultivates excellence in communications of religious faith and values while advancing religious literacy. Keep in mind, we were founded in 1929, so we have been doing this for a long time. We hope to be doing it for much longer. I mentioned in the mission statement that we provide professional development opportunities, and our monthly webinars are one of those opportunities. What I thought I would do, and I usually do before we get started too much, is we do a quick little round robin and let everybody introduce themselves, because I think it's helpful for those that are in attendance and helpful for those who are speaking. And it's real quick and simple, and I will begin. My name is Teresa Faust. I am in Dayton, Ohio. I work for United Methodist Communications. I am the research manager there. And as I mentioned, I am the president of RCC. I will hand it off to someone else to do a quick intro. Anne, how about you next?
Sure. I'm trying to think. Am I muted? I don't know. I've been using Teams so much. I don't know. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know, lucky or not lucky. So I'm Ann Borish. I work for Westpac Benefits and Investment, an agency of the United Methodist Church. I have worked for years in many different roles on research as it relates to Westpac's participants. That's how I've known Teresa probably since we were 10, right? Being so young. And I've done research in the past on clergy well-being, related to, somewhat in partnership, also related to conference finances, COVID, et cetera, et cetera. So not officially in communications, but I have worked with many who do.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to move on to Anna Piela. I'll let you pronounce your name.
Anna Piela. Hello, everyone. I'm the senior writer at the American Baptist Home Mission Societies, and for actually 6 months now, I've been the associate editor of the Christian Citizen, which is our in-house magazine. And so, yeah, I mean, I write for work, but stories about interfaith relations are sort of my passion project. So I'm interested, in sort of data as it relates to different faiths and comparisons, and Pew definitely is a website that I visit very often when I write. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. All right, Ryan, I'm going to jump to you next.
So my apologies for not being on camera. Today is my son's high school graduation. And so things are kind of crazy here. I'm going to have to duck out early so he can take pictures with his girlfriend. But I'm Ryan Coe. I run the New York Office of Public and International Affairs for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so I'm based here in New York, and I also serve as the vice president of the RCC.
Thank you, Ryan. Glad you're here. Camilla, let's jump to you next.
Hi, I'm Camilla Myers. I'm in research at the United Methodist Publishing House in Nashville, Tennessee.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Perfect. Janie Green, you're next.
Hi, I'm Janie Green. I work with research services at PCUSA, and I am super excited to be here and learn some more about what all y'all got going on.
Wonderful. Glad you're here. Amanda, how about you?
Hi, I'm Amanda Bryant. I am also in research at the United Methodist Publishing House.
Welcome. And last but not least, well, actually, Darla, how about you next? Darla, I'm going to pause on. Oh, there we go.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry about that. For some reason, my camera's not working today, but I am Darla Carter. I'm a communicator with the Presbyterian Church USA, generally covering subjects that relate to compassion, peace, and justice.
Okay, wonderful. And then Jenny, did you do a quick intro? Why don't you do a quick one?
Now, hi, everybody. Jenny Heiser. I'm the Executive Director for RCC, and I will be probably, hopefully, quiet in the background, just trying to take care of any technical stuff as we go along. So we will be posting it. So thanks to the two presenters for your comments and sharing your knowledge with us today. We really appreciate it.
All right, so we got through that pretty quickly. I appreciate you guys doing that. I think it's helpful, like I said, for those of us that are present and for the presenters, because we always have a little bit of a different group of people. So as you know, we have two speakers today from Pew Research, and I'm excited because I think that is an organization that I get a lot of emails from. I read a lot of things, but I haven't had this kind of interaction before, so I'm thrilled. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them because you got that in your invite and they will probably share a little bit, but Achsah, Callahan, and Schiller are our speakers. They're going to share about types of information and religious research that Pew conducts, the best ways to access their religion data, and details about their methodology and research, in the hopes that you guys can learn and apply what you learn from this to the work that you do in your communications and beyond. So we've got researchers and communicators, and I'm going to hand it over. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much, Teresa. Thanks to Teresa and Jenny for inviting us here. We're really excited to connect with you. Number one, because we're also communicators. We're on the communications team at Pew Research Center. So yes, you probably get a lot of emails. And if you don't, we are here to tell you how we can add you to our email list if you would like more emails from us. But we also, we work very closely with the religion research team at Pew. And so we know there's a lot of data that Pew puts out, and we're hoping that we can give you kind of our best tips and tricks for accessing the data. And we also want to hear kind of your ideas. If you're like, I'm looking for this data and I think you should make it easier for us to find, we would love to hear that, so that we could take it back to our teams and make that happen. But yeah, I'm a communications manager, so I work specifically with the religion research team at Pew. So put out the press releases, help answer journalist questions, media questions from the general public, think through, events and different types of ways to get our religion data out there and make sure that.
I think do that at the end. Paint at all the big stuff first, and then do that one.
Sorry, I think there's someone's not muted yet. But yeah, so basically that is what my role on the team, and I will let Anna introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Anna Schiller, and I'm now an associate director on the communications team, but I used to have Achsah's role. So I used to, when I first joined Pew, I joined to do communications for the religion research team. And my favorite story to tell about that is that when Pew offered me the job, I had actually applied for a different position on the comms team. And they said, well, your skill set is such where you combine international and domestic outreach, and we'd love that for the religion position. And I thought, oh, I don't really want that. I have no direct relationship to what that topic even is. I grew up in a very secularized country. And within 3 weeks, it was like, this is the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I really enjoyed my Achsah. I don't know how many, when did you join? 2 years ago? So,
yes.
So my 7 years on the religion team were phenomenal. I learned so much about religion in the United States, and I was very privileged to be promoting that work. So I'm glad that fate forced this topic on me, and I'm still very much attached to it, even though formally I don't serve on the religion team anymore.
So not to make this super formal, but we did prep a few slides just so, and then we'll also, I'll share my screen so that we can walk you through our website, but then we will, not stop sharing that so we could also just have a conversation informally, but we'll just I'll share my screen now so we can kind of just share a few remarks, but feel free to, interrupt us at any point if you have questions. And if you could let me know if you can't see my screen right now. going to move ahead, assuming that everyone can see my screen. And I'm going to kick it over to Anna to actually share a bit more about Pew Research Center if anyone's not familiar with us.
So I get to do the throat clearing, but that's okay. So, you know, you may have heard our name before, Pew Research Center, but who we are is we often define ourselves and talk about ourselves in the three nons, the three things we're sort of not. We're nonprofit. That means nobody can commission a study done by Pew Research Center. We don't have clients, we don't have advertisers. All of our funding comes from charitable organizations. Our primary funder are the Pew Charitable Trust. That's why we have that name. Sometimes in the religion space, people think we're called Pew for the church Pew, but it's really just the family name Pew. But you know, sure, that conflation works well for the religion team, so we don't fight too hard back on that. We're a nonpartisan organization. That's sort of very much a DC term. I feel like outside of DC, people don't really use that term much. We're obviously not affiliated with any party, and then we're non-advocacy. And I think that is the point that we're proudest of, and that has helped us build the reputation that we have now. We do not take policy positions. We don't take any positions on any of the topics that we study. You will never hear Achsah or me or any of our experts express an opinion, make a policy recommendation, or engage in speculations. We're literally just the facts, which is why we sometimes refer to ourselves as a fact tank, not a think tank. That distinction feels also very DC to me. So I realize that we have a much broader audience here today. And what we do is we study what people think, how people act, what their views are on a variety of topics. Religion is only one of about 10 topics, 10 bigger buckets of topics that we study. And we do that so that we have data to feed into public discourse. We all have our own anecdotal experience of, you know, American society, you know, other global societies. We try to sort of put data behind that so people can sort of compare. Is my experience similar to other people? Is it not? You know, and in what way is the community that I live in representative or not representative of the larger society that I live in? We are most famous for public opinion polling, of course, but we don't just do public opinion polling. We also do demographic research, which means we often use third-party data, such as census data, for our analyses. We do content analysis, and I'm not entirely sure what data-driven social science research means other than all the things that I already said, but there it is. This is our formal mission statement. All right, back over to you, Achsah.
And I'll just add to that, just because sometimes we get this question a lot, especially from the religion space. We don't advocate for any specific religion, religious thought, or theology. So we really feel like our best contribution is to be very neutral, and where that allows us to better research the topics that we're studying, like religion. So just a quick overview of what we wanted to make sure to cover today is we want to give you kind of some insight into religion research at Pew Research Center, just kind of how the team is structured, the types of research we do. And then we'll kind of talk about best ways of accessing our data. And I'm sorry, we're known for our methodology. We're Pew Research Center, so we're going to do the briefest intro to methodology, especially ones that are, you know, things about methodology that are helpful to keep in mind while reading through our religion research, but we'll try to keep it as accessible and non-jargony as possible. It also helps that we are not the researchers and we're not the methodologists. So, you know, what I can understand is what I can explain. So, and actually I'll give that part to Anna because she's been at Pew Research Center much longer than me. And then we'll share some frequently asked questions, you know, what we're often being asked by journalists or by other folks, and we would love to hear from you if you have questions for us or thoughts for us, and then we'd love to share how we can stay connected. So I wanted to quickly just run through what religion research looks like at Pew Research Center. So there are actually like about 8 main research areas that the teams at Pew Research Center studies, anything from science and technology to politics and policy. But religion is one of the research topics we study, and we have a religion team at the Research Center that studies religion. It's actually the biggest team at the center, and part of why they're the biggest team is because we have 4 main areas of research. The other research teams kind of focus their research on kind of a couple of different areas, whereas religion is like, we want to do it all. Anna mentioned, doing a public opinion polling is what Pew Research Center is known for. So we have a domestic religion survey team that does public opinion polling in the US. This might be the research that you're most familiar with. This line of research typically asks about, what is your religious identity? What are your beliefs and practices? And that team is especially interested in religion and public life. How does religion affect views on politics, on public policy, on issues of science and technology? So those are the types of things that the domestic religion team studies, and they do public opinion polling. The international religion team is very similar. They're interested in the same questions, except they ask it outside of the US. So this team has been doing a regional survey for about the past close to 15 years. So they started off in 2008, 2009, looking at religion, religious identity, beliefs and practices in sub-Saharan Africa. Then I think right after that, they went to Latin America. They've surveyed in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, the Middle East. They surveyed in India, Southeast Asia, and just this week on Monday, they released the findings from a survey looking at religion and spirituality in East Asian societies. So that's actually the last region that they hadn't studied up until this point. So we're really excited that they were able to, put out the results from that survey. And they're actually moving to not doing a regional analysis, but doing a comparative study. So every year they're going to be in about 35 countries asking questions about religion and politics, religion and society. So we're really excited about that because we're going to be able to show some comparative data of, how might people in Europe or Asia or Latin America be feeling about maybe, religion and nationalism. That's a topic that we get asked about quite a bit. A lot of people are interested in. So we'll have some really interesting data on that soon. So those are our two survey teams. And I'm going to skip ahead to the next slide to talk about our demography and restrictions team. So the top two screenshots are from our domestic religion survey from earlier this year and our latest international religion survey that I mentioned. But we also have two teams, two sub-teams on the religion team that don't do any public opinion survey. Instead, they study religion using different methodology. So the demography team, one thing that they are known for is looking at the religious composition in each country and in region. So they're really interested in religious change in religious groups and estimating their size. So they work with these huge data sets, from the UN or from different countries, from the census, from different countries. So their projects are massive, and but they're really interesting because they get to look at religion and religious change across the whole world in a really different way than our other teams do. And then our final team is the restrictions on religion team. Most people who engage with this line of research are interested in religious freedom, but religious freedom is really hard to measure. So we instead look at the opposite side of that, of restrictions on religion. And this team has been doing that work for about 15 years. They've been using the same methodology. So one really big value add that this team has is they're able to show trends in how different countries are, are passing laws or engaging with religious groups and maybe passing restrictions and where religious groups are facing restrictions around the world. So I mentioned a few of these projects while talking about the teams, but wanted to highlight some of our major projects. The first is the religious landscape study. So this is a study that we did in 2007 and 2014, and we're working on the next one. This is the biggest survey that the religion team does, and this is done just in the US, but it's because it's so big, it lets us really dive into very specific denominations. It lets us provide state level data. Usually we're surveying at the national level. So we report out on groups and how they're feeling in the US, but we can't say, for example, evangelicals in Ohio feel this way about this particular issue. The religious landscape study lets us do that, and we're working on the next one. So we're really excited to be able to have that data for you in the next few years. The domestic team also has done some in-depth studies of smaller religious groups. You might have seen we've done studies on Jewish Americans, on Muslim Americans. Last year, we did a study about religion among Asian Americans. So because most of our work is done at the national level, some smaller religious groups, we're not often able to report out on them because of the sample size limitations we run into. But we want to make sure that we're also being able to capture their views. And so we do these in-depth studies of smaller religious groups in the US to be able to provide data on these groups and their views. And then I've mentioned the projections report that the demography team does, but I also wanted to mention, because you might see this term in our press releases or on our website, but the Global Religious Futures Project is a line of research that we do that's co-funded by the John Templeton Foundation. And this is really all of our international research work falls under this bucket. So if that's an area that you're interested in, and if you're really interested in religion outside of the US, keep an eye out for this project and the reports published under this project name, because that's where you'll find it. I'm going to pause there before I switch over to sharing our websites. Let's see if I can switch up my screen, but are there any questions before I switch screens? And I don't think I could see hands raised, so if you feel free to unmute.
This is Teresa. I'll ask a question or two real quick. The religious landscape study, just to clarify, the last time you did that was 2014.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. I'll wait for my other questions until you're done.
Okay. Great.
Thanks.
And let me know if you can't see the Pew Research Center website right now.
Can I this is Anne, sort of a piggyback to Teresa's question for the religious landscape study. Is it a randomized survey that represents, quote unquote, the population of each state? It's not like the same people, unless by accident, are getting the survey every 7, 8, 9 years. How is that survey selected? And that clearly is a quite prominent and well-known fact study that Pew distributes, and as religion has become intertwined, see Louisiana yesterday, with what's supposed to be American public life, I think it gets even more prominent.
Achsah, do you want me to jump in since it's the methodology question?
Yes, please feel free to jump in.
So the religious landscape studies of 2007 and 2014 were done through RDD, or random digit dialing phone methods. So they were a interview administered survey that was randomized and obviously designed to capture a nationally representative sample, and I don't want to get too deep into the methodology for those that are not into it. But Anne, we're happy to geek out with you over this anytime. I know you're into research as well. Of course, the data then get weighted to census targets, so to make sure that it's representative. I will, however, say that, and I think we'll get into that a little bit more later, the religious landscape study is conducted in English and Spanish. It is not conducted in any other languages, which also then you kind of have to start getting a little careful. For example, we do capture Muslims, and we have enough that we can break them out, but it is important to keep in mind that they were the only two language options they had were English and Spanish. I think somewhat close to 30% of Muslims in the United States are immigrants, and so they may not be comfortable taking a survey in English, so it would exclude that population. That's why we do these smaller studies that Achsah, or these sort of more targeted studies that Achsah mentioned into the views of other religious groups. The new study will be done differently. We can't talk about that too much now, but we're happy to share more on the methodology of the new religious landscape study once we have published the results.
Yeah, and some will say, well, who's going to pick up the phone? I mean,
yeah,
but
it won't be a phone survey. That's for that reason. Yep.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Any other questions for right now? If not, I will move to sharing my screen. And you should be seeing the Pew Research Center website right now. This is the best way to access our data. You might see our data, in different news stories or, in a newsletter somewhere. But if you're looking for kind of the full context and full picture, the best place to go is our website. So this is our website homepage. If you're here and you don't immediately see a religion story, don't worry, this is just our latest report. And as I mentioned, we have a lot of research teams at the center, so they're putting out reports almost every day. So you'll see, we had a religion report come out earlier this week, but sometimes you won't see a religion report on this homepage, but you're still in the right place. But if you are looking for religion-specific reports, the first tab under our header is research topics, and religion is the fifth one down. And this topic page, it hosts all of our religion reports and content. So we have reports in here, we have blog posts, we might have data essays. We also actually include a lot of reports that the religion team doesn't work on, but if there's a tie-in to religion, it will appear on this page. So for example, our politics team recently did a study on abortion, and we knew a lot of religion journalists and communicators were looking for that data. So we have it on this page so you can find it really easily. So up at the top, you'll see there are different subtopics that you might be interested in. You can go directly there. For example, we have a page for the Global Religious Futures Project. If you're looking for all of the international religion data, you can go right there. But our latest main reports will be up here. And if you keep scrolling, you'll get all of our blog posts and pretty much everything. But I wanted to click through to one of our reports, because I think there's a lot of information on here, and it took me a while to learn where to go to get each piece of information. So I just wanted to call out some specific parts of our report. So first is that on the right hand side here, you'll see you can download a PDF of the report. So if you wanted to kind of look through the entire report or just have it easily accessible, you can download all of our reports over here. You'll also see the top line. I know some of you are researchers, so you're familiar with this, but I didn't know what a top line was when I joined Pew Research Center. But if you're reading our report and you have questions, if you're wondering, how did we ask this question? You can go in the top line, and this will show you exactly how the questions were worded. And we have that available for every survey report that we do. Going back to the report page, you can see the table of contents. So if you want to jump directly to a specific part of the report, you can do that. And then I also wanted to call out the how we did this box. So this is usually, you have to click on it to see it. But if you want a quick look at how we conducted a particular survey or demographic analysis, this is our really quick version of how we did it. So you'll see, it'll have our sample size, it'll have when the survey was fielded. It will, if it's not just, it'll include, how we conducted the survey. So this was done through 3 panels. And then it'll also link to different methodologies. So it'll link to the whole methodology. And you can see the methodology page is pretty involved, which is why I like the how we did this, because it is the TLDR version of the methodology page. So that's kind of a quick primer of what you can expect to see in each report. I also wanted to show you a few other things. One is my favorite part of the website. So if I get a question from a journalist or from anyone saying, have you ever asked about this? As I mentioned, I've only been at Pew for 2 years. So there's a lot of things that we might have asked that I'm not aware of. Here's what I do. And here's what I think is one of the coolest parts of our website. Under tools and resources in the top part of the website, we have data set downloads for the researchers on the call. You can also just download our data sets directly. But this is my favorite part of the website. It's a survey question search. There's a US version and an international version. But in the US question version, you can say, you can just search all of our survey questions by a keyword and see what comes up. So for example, if you're wondering how have we asked about abortion, if you just type in abortion, you hit search and you scroll down, you'll see all the questions, you'll see the interview dates. If you click this drop down, you'll see the responses and it also linked to the full report. So this is my personal favorite part of the website because I think it's just so powerful. And especially if you have a really niche question that you're like, I just want to know if they've ever asked about this. This is the perfect way of trying to figuring out if we have. Just two other quick things about our website. If you see short reads, we just mean blog posts by that. So this will pull up all of the blog posts we've written in chronological order. So if you just want a quick look at what is going on, what we're studying, what we're thinking about at Pew Research Center, this is a great way of seeing kind of the latest pieces of research from us. The final part, before I kick it over to Anna, so you don't have to just listen to me talk forever, is our methodology page. So we have a section of our website that says our methods. This has more information on our methods. So, if you're curious about how are we going to survey how are we going to field the next religious landscape study, once that survey is out, this will have more data on kind of the methodologies that we used. And then we also have a short course, like an email course on public opinion polling basics. So, you can find this right on this page of the site, or you can sign up to take the email course, and you can also get email newsletters specifically about methodology. I'm going to stop sharing the website and but wanted to pause there also if there are any questions on the website before I turn it over to Anna to share a bit about methodology. All right, Anna, I think it's over to you.
I enjoy that. I used to, when I planned these presentations, I always gave the boring parts to my boss, and I enjoy being on the receiving end of that. Now I guess I deserve that. Methods can be quite boring, and I'm not going to get into the details of it. I am a political scientist by training, but I'll try to keep my communicator hat on. What's important about methods and why we like talking about it, and any of the researchers in the room as they introduce themselves, is understanding methodology helps you understand and discern between valid, valuable data points and maybe surveys and survey results that need to be taken with a grain of salt. Survey research is incredibly expensive. To do it well is incredibly expensive. So, a lot of organizations are experimenting with how to do it less expensive, and sometimes quality can suffer, and that's okay as long as there's transparency. But that's why we like talking about it. We do invest in high quality survey methods. And you kind of brought up the point of who's going to pick up the phone anymore, right? I mean, we all know that we don't do it, right? When I get a call on my phone and I don't recognize the number, I'm not picking it up. So Pew, obviously, and many other survey organizations were feeling the pain of that years and years ago. I mean, more than a decade ago. When I started working at Pew close to 9 years ago, they had already started thinking about, okay, what do we do? If people don't pick up the phone, and if those who do pick up the phone represent just a specific sliver of the population, then first of all, we can't afford it anymore. And to what extent are we even making nationally representative statements about, people's opinions. So we started creating the American Trends Panel, ATP for short. It is a panel that we own, and we recruit people into it through sort of random selection, and we invite them to be on the panel and remain on the panel for a period of time, and on a regular basis take surveys for us. Those surveys are administered on their screen, so they're no longer, and this is kind of changing again, but for a long time they were not interview administered, they were so-called self-administered. That can have so-called mode effects. I'm not going to get into that unless somebody says they want to talk about mode effects, but what that does is it gives us a chance to reach people and have a nationally representative sample. It makes it easy for people to participate, and we know, because these panels are carefully curated and managed, we know that we can sort of make up for, through the work of the panel, make up for populations that are so hard to reach, right? Now, maybe some of you are thinking, well, but there are people out there that don't own a computer, that don't have internet access, you're leaving them out. That is correct. We don't leave them out. We actually teach them how to use an iPad. We give them an internet connection. We give them an iPad. Now that's changing again. We're actually recruiting them to take surveys over the phone. But yes, it's always tricky, and there is no one perfect survey methodology. It always is a question of, getting as close as you can and being able to make nationally representative statements about the data that you have. The American Trends Panel allows us to do that, though it does have its weaknesses. Those surveys are conducted in English and Spanish. That's obviously also a limitation. But again, we, for the most part, can make nationally representative statements with a lot of confidence. Sample size is an important issue. If I ask one person of their opinion, they're obviously not representative of the United States. But if I ask enough people that are randomly distributed throughout the country and represent, the country and society and its age makeup, its, geographic distribution, and so on and so forth, I can, with about 100 people, of an effective sample size of 100 people, I can make nationally representative statements. So if you ever see groups not broken out in one of our surveys, it's not that they weren't included. It's that there's not enough of them for us to make nationally representative statements about them. Often smaller groups, even just Jewish Americans, they make up about 2% of the US population. Muslim Americans make up about 1%. Those are hard to reach groups. If we don't have the effective sample size, their views are represented in the overall findings, but not broken out separately. That brings me to how we survey rare populations. We've gone through a couple of different iterations on that. We don't take the easy way out. I know that somebody at one point, when we released findings from our 2020 Jewish survey, thought that we had called people and have gone through phone books and picked out Jewish sounding names and called them. That is obviously methodologically one of the worst methods of surveying people and on a nationally representative scale. That's not what we do. What we actually do, and this is so mind-boggling that I have to talk about it here for a second, is we send out letters you can buy from the Postal Service. You can buy basically all American mailing addresses, and we randomly selected mailing addresses, and they received letters from us inviting them to log online and take the survey. Those letters, to make sure that people know that these are legitimate letters from Pew Research Center. Other methodology researchers have found that, including a small amount of cash in those letters makes it a lot more legitimate. So we actually mailed out, for our last Jewish American survey, we mailed out something like 400,000 letters with $2 in them. I try not to think about how many of those letters just went up straight to the landfill, and there's probably a lot of cash there somewhere. That's how we survey them. We invite them to take what we call a screener survey. And then if people identify with the group that we're interested in, they then get invited to take a deeper survey on that. So that's how we survey rare populations. emphasis on trends. We love trends. Trends, for the researchers among you, you know that's the most valuable thing you can own. Point estimates are somewhat interesting, but not really that much. 34% of X think this is kind of like, okay, 34%. But if you can say, and that is different from the past year, it has grown, it has shrunk, that's when the story gets interesting. But we can't always trend. We have asked many of the questions that we're still asking over many, many years, but our switch from phone survey to the American Trends panel has broken the trend. So some people play a little fast and loose with survey methodology, and if they do, that's on them. We don't. We will not compare questions necessarily that we asked on the phone to questions that we asked online, even if the question wording and the answer options are exactly the same. Sometimes you can do that, and we do so-called mode studies to see if there's a mode effect, but sometimes you can't. And it has something to do with how people respond to questions that they heard somebody ask and how they respond to questions that they saw on a screen. So if you ever see us not trending something, especially if you use the question tool that Achsah was showing you, and you see, wait, but Pew asked this question before, why are they not trending directly to that? That is because we can. We've determined that, you know, trending directly would give a false impression of change over time. And then the last point I'm asked to make, and I know I already talked way too long, so I'm going to try to keep this short. We sometimes talk about the universe, and it's important for us to keep in mind the universe when we talk about certain points. You know, when we ask the general population and we say, for example, you know, and I don't want to say the wrong number, but I believe something like 23% of Americans identify as Catholics, right? And we then go into Catholics and say, you know, 79% of Catholics, you know, hold this specific belief. There's sometimes sort of a, you know, confusion about, wait, is it 79% of Americans hold this belief or Catholics? That's something where the universe becomes really important to think about, because Pew, we're all so steeped in our data and we know it so well that we sometimes forget that it can be confusing the way we write it up, and the universe is often the thing that gets most confusing. Achsah, back over to you. I think I feel like I've said everything that you asked me to say, but if I'm missing anything, feel free to add.
No, that was perfect. Thank you for taking on the harder parts of this presentation. So I think we just have, you know, maybe 12 minutes left in the time. So I wanted to pause there and just open it up for any general questions. We have some questions that we've gotten asked frequently that, you know, I could just keep quizzing Anna and ask her to answer all the hard questions, but wanted to open it up to if anything is on your minds right now.
I'll ask a question. What if I have a question I would love for you guys to ask? Is there a way for me to submit something to you?
Yes, you can email me and then I can take it to the researchers and say, hey, we've got some questions coming in around this topic.
Okay.
It's ultimately, so we have a research proposal process that we undertake every year at the center where we say, what do we research for the next year? And so, you know, we have brainstorms that are open to everyone. I'm always, you know, in touch with the religion team. So yes, we get questions from people and we're like, that's a great idea. We should study that. We obviously can't study everything that everyone proposes, but we will raise it to the researchers and say, we're getting a lot of interest or a lot of people are wondering about this. Is there a way that we can study this?
Okay, so I would email you directly. There isn't like a spot on the website to click, or I guess maybe a contact us.
Yeah, the best way would be because I'm in touch with the religion team every day, just email me directly and I'll get it in front of them.
Okay.
I'll say that, you know, because Pew Research Center doesn't, you know, you can't commission a study, right? There never is any promise that we could do or ask any specific questions. And the questions that we do ask have to work for the entire population, which sometimes gets a little tricky. You know, how do you ask something that might be fascinating to ask questions? How do you ask that of a whole population? That sometimes doesn't work. But we're particularly grateful for sort of general big topic ideas. So, you know, that's one of the things that you know, when you live in your own bubble, and you guys probably know this too, when you live in your own bubble, what is of interest to your own little bubble may not be of interest to a wider audience. So you kind of serve as that sounding board for us, and kind of vice versa, right? You can tell us, well, in our bubble, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're thinking about. This is what we wish we had data on.
For example, one time I talked to the head of our domestic religion team, and I said, I'm really interested in religious pilgrimages, and like, can we ask questions about that? And he was like, you know what? So few people do that in comparison to the general American population that we're not going to get good data on that if we ask it. People will just be confused as what do you mean by a religious pilgrimage? So sometimes that happens to me too, where I'll raise a question and be like, no, this just doesn't work for a survey question that goes out to a general population. Yeah, Jenny, I see you have your hand up.
So a little bit different spin on what Teresa asked, but say we wanted to use a statistic or a finding, but we want to make sure that we are explaining it correctly. How do we say, you know, I'm not a researcher, I want to make sure what I'm saying is accurate. How would we go about doing that?
Yeah, the first step, you could email me to we often do this for a few folks where, you know, we'll double check and be like, yes, this is, you know, you're reading this correctly or reading this chart directly. If I'm confused, I'll bring in a researcher to make sure that I'm reading it correctly and helping to explain it correctly. Is there anything you would add on that, Anna?
No, that's what we're here for. That's what the communications team does, is right. You can, we are happy to be your first point of contact on anything. And then, yes, we are interested in the data being used correctly, but we love the engagement, you know, and knowing how you're using the data, or, you know, how you're thinking about the data. So yeah, I mean, that's easy for me to say. And this is maybe my little revenge here, is email Achsah.
Great, thank you.
So my question is maybe a little bit more nefarious, that after the fact, some group, let's presume religious, has taken something from your fact tank, but they have not either intentionally, or maybe it's a blind spot. So they said, Pew says, and it really supports their point, but it's completely out of context, and or it's not shared with the juxtaposition with the other 4 questions that you did also analyze. I mean, you know what I mean? I guess you're not scouring the internets, but I suspect that happens quite a bit, right? People pull what supports their position, completely ignoring, you know, the underpinnings of the research and results. How, I mean, you know, it's already out there. I don't know how and or what you might do, but yes, I think most thoughtful people, if they're not sure, would reach out and say, do I understand this? Is this positioned correctly? But there are a lot of people who really don't care about that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you as communicators probably all kind of bump into that sometimes, right? The question of, do I engage or do I not engage, when, you know, it's factually incorrect, or it's, let's say, irresponsible use of facts, right? And for us, it's always a tricky question. It depends on who's doing it. But more often than not, we hope that others will jump in. We try not to police how our data is used, especially if they're doing it, if on the face of it is correct, right? If, like the situation you described, right? They're picking the data point and they're representing the data point correctly, but they're not putting it into the right context. We try not to get involved unless it's somebody we know well, and we sort of reach out and say, hey, if you have any questions about it, you know, we'd be happy to talk to you, excuse me, a little bit more about this. Now, if a journalist does that, we do sometimes, you know, sort of carefully nudge them. If it's factually incorrect, we request a correction. If it's a politician doing it, often, or say a person in sort of with a big public voice doing it, often the media will fact check and sort of add sort of that. But it's you know, we see this playing out, particularly in social media, and I'm sure you as communicators have all seen that, right? There is sort of an argument that's happening on social media. And the question is, the brand, does it make sense for the brand to jump in right now, or does it not make sense? And it's a tricky question. I think that, you know, there isn't an easy answer every time. But the cherry picking, as we call it, sort of the situation that you described, we see that so much, and we see it done from every direction that it's almost impossible to even try and keep track of it. It's just a fact that, you know, when a data point supports somebody's narrative, they're more likely to point to it. When it doesn't support their narrative, they're less likely to point to it.
And to Anne's point, I think sometimes people try to twist it to make it fit what they are projecting. You know, they're like, well, they go beyond the actual fact to try and interpret it. And yeah.
So I'll give you a quick example, just as a quick anecdote. You all remember, this is 2017, and there's, you know, a new administration in office, and the administration had the then candidate, and then later as the president, had made certain remarks about not letting immigrants from Muslim majority countries come to the country, the so-called Muslim ban, right? And there was a court case, Trump versus Hawaii, or maybe it was Hawaii versus Trump. I get confused, but you know which court case I'm referring to. And what's interesting is that both sides cited the same Pew report to support their point. They even cited the same data point, or they were coming at it from two different directions. The Hawaii side was saying, you know, the Pew Research Center report on religious composition in these countries shows that 90% or more of people in this country identify as Muslim, ergo, banning these people from coming to the United States is in effect a Muslim ban. The other side was arguing up to 9% of the population in these countries are not Muslim. Effectively, we're banning people from these countries. They're not all Muslim. Some of them are Christian or, you know, have other faiths. So it is not a Muslim ban. And that's very interesting. It was kind of a bizarre situation to have that happen, but it also is then, how do we interpret the data point? They were pointing to the exact same report and almost the exact same page to make that their points. I guess that's also part of how, you know, how data work. You can always look at it from both sides. And so we often refer to ourselves as Pew on the one hand, on the other hand, Research Center, because we do the same with our own data.
Interesting.
I'm going to just take a moment here because it is the top of the hour and we said we would go for an hour to recognize the time that we are at. Okay. I know, Achsah, you said you had some frequently asked questions and there may be some other questions. So I don't want to shut us down if people can remain, but I also want to respect everybody's time. So, I'm willing to stick around a little longer. I don't want to hold our speakers if they need to go. So you guys tell us if you need to go.
Yeah, I mean, I could stay for another 5 minutes. We just prepped some questions that we get frequently, but we definitely don't have to cover them. I mostly just also wanted to say a lot of my answers to things and honest answers has been email me. So I wanted to share my email. I can drop it in the chat, but it's just acallahan@pewresearch.org. I'm really there to serve you all. And, you know, if you have questions about our religion research, you know, if your organizations have questions, just feel free to email me. If you aren't getting emails from me and you want to, let me know. Happy to add you to our list. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is we don't do presentations a whole lot, but especially with your groups, you know, our researchers are also really care about connecting with your religious groups and making sure our data is accessible to you all. So if you're interested in hosting one of our researchers for a presentation, we can definitely talk about that. This is typically, we do it for a larger group, maybe a national looking group, but just wanted to put that out there as like we do sometimes we are able to do that at times. So yeah, just email me basically.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Again, I'm thrilled to get to talk to you guys. I've been on the receiving end of emails and been aware of Pew since I started my role with the United Methodist Communications Organization. So it's been 10 years. And, you know, oddly, like you said, you're not just religion stuff, but that happened to be my foray into it. But as a researcher, I am fascinated, and I just want to say thanks because I learned some new things today that I hadn't known about you guys before.
Yeah.
So thank you. Any other questions before we stop? I have one more question, and I might not have a quick answer. Are you using or addressing artificial intelligence in the world that you all live in? Anna, maybe that's a you question. And it's not a short answer either, I don't think.
We are, I mean, in a couple of different ways. We're studying it, and we're studying people's experiences with it. Our internet and technology team does that. So if you go to the page and you go to the topic page, I think technology, there is a whole section on AI. We have asked questions if have people, you know, encountered AI, do they, you know, think that AI is going to take over their job, those kind of things. AI in different spaces, right? AI in healthcare and so on and so forth. But and what's maybe more interesting to this group, you know, AI is already out there in the world. AI is used to write news stories. AI is used to interact with people, right? And we're still kind of figuring those pieces out. Also, our internal approach to using AI. Right now, we are experimenting with using AI only sort of in sort of productivity focused ways, not in analytical ways, not in any of those ways. We have, you know, done content analysis and written our own machine learning algorithms, which is AI essentially, right? In the past, actually, there's one that we call the Sermonator that is might be of interest to all of you if you haven't ever seen our work on analyzing U.S. sermons. Achsah, maybe you can share the link later, but the Sermonator is just our internal term. If you Google it, you might not find anything. But we build a tool that scraped church websites for either you know, written documents or audio documents or video documents or video files of sermons, because many churches, those that have a website, will post those, right? And so the internet got scraped during a certain time, and then there was a machine learning algorithm that then read all of that. The audio and video files were transcribed, read all of that, and analyzed it. It's incredibly difficult, and it was more experimental. But that is the Sermonator, and AI certainly played into that. We're kind of thinking about how to figure out how AI is going to impact our jobs, and not just our jobs with our employers, but I'm sure all of you have your share of contacts with the media, right? And media is shifting more and more towards utilizing AI. And, you know, sort of for us to think about, well, what does that mean for us as we organize media relations, right? Should we be writing press releases that appeal to a chatbot rather than a real person? Because that real person, there may not be a real person left to read press releases at that outlet, right? So those are the kind of the big thoughts. We don't really have a sort of even a half-finished approach to it. I think we're still looking at this as an evolving space. And I think probably like all of you, we're half excited and half scared.
Well, I gotta say, you gave me another nugget. I mean, a link to the Sermonator report, that's something that I can, well, that's the kind of stuff I can share with my folks that work at the communications agency, and they can kind of read it, and who knows where it'll go. So this has been really beneficial for me. I appreciate you guys. Anybody else have any final comments or remarks? All right, we're 5 minutes past, so Achsah, I think we did okay. And Jenny did put in the chat when our next webinar will be, Wednesday, July 24. So you can read that and we'll wrap it up. Thank you, everyone. Jenny, any other final comments?
Just know that the video from this will be posted on our website soon. So give me a little bit of time and we'll have it up for you on our YouTube channel. Thank you both. It was really informative.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.